When talking about the history of the Civil War, there's a lot of attention that gets put on William Tecumseh Sherman and his drive toward Atlanta in 1864 and then his subsequent march to the sea. Well, in June of 1864, Sherman started to realize that there was a little bit of a threat to his army as he was pushing to Atlanta, and that was with his supply line. His supply line was mainly a rail line that ran from Nashville to Chattanooga, and threatening this supply line was a Confederate cavalryman who was just a constant thorn in the side of the Union Army, a guy by the name of Nathan Bedford Forrest. Forrest had moved up into Middle Tennessee and was looking to disrupt Sherman's supply line. So in response, Sherman arranged for a guy by the name of Sam Sturgis, who's at Wilson's Creek, who we've talked about in a prior video, to basically move into Mississippi, threaten the Mobile and Ohio Railroad, and try and draw Forrest back away from his supply line. And Sturgis and Forrest were eventually going to clash where I am right now at a place called Brice's Crossroads. All right, we have moved up to Booneville, Mississippi. And in early June of 1864, Nathan Bedford Forrest, he is headed north. He's headed for Middle Tennessee to hit the supply line of General Sherman as he is making his way to Atlanta. And on June the 9th, he would have found himself right here and would have had a temporary headquarters set up in this home called the Cunningham House. All right, now, before we get into this, I want to make sure that I give credit where credit is due. The only reason that I know about this temporary headquarters for Nathan Bedford Forrest at the Cunningham House is from a video on the YouTube channel for the American Battlefield Trust. They did some videos on Brice's Crossroads that I definitely think that you should check out. So I want to make sure that people don't think that I'm smarter than what I am. Got this courtesy of their work. But anyway, again, this is the Cunningham House, and on June the 9th, the overall commander of Confederate forces in this region, a guy by the name of General Stephen D. Lee, is going to meet with Nathan Bedford Forrest here in this little home. And, of course, you got Sam Sturgis, who is approaching from the west. He is the obvious target is, some points along the Mobile, Ohio rail line, which would disrupt the Confederate supply lines. So they've got to deal with that. So they kicked around some different ideas. Forrest is eventually going to have a council of war in this home with some of his brigade commanders who are spread out along the rail line. And based on where Sturgis's column has been sighted, Nathan Bedford Forrest knows exactly where he's going. He knew this country really, really well. And he said, these guys are headed for Brice's Crossroads, or they're going to have to cross through there. And it had been raining like crazy. And even though he is outnumbered like 8,500 or 9,000 to 3,500, he has a plan. He said, it's been raining. It's hotter than heck, which it's hotter than heck today too here in Mississippi. He said, these guys are going to be worn out. Their cavalry is going to have to precede their infantry. And they'll probably get to Brice's Crossroads about 3 hours before the infantry. So he comes up with this plan where he said, if we can get there, well, we can basically pick them off a little bit at a time and defeat them in detail. So we'll deal with the cavalry first, we'll whoop them, and then when the infantry comes up, we'll whoop them too. So it's kind of like this idea of, how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time. Okay, so rather than taking on, Sturgis's whole of Union forces, well, they're going to get them just a bite at a time. So they're going to set out from here, from Boonville, and then the other brigades are going to get word, the ones that are spread out, and they are all going to be consolidating at Brice's Crossroads. All right, now we have made our way back to Brice's Crossroads, and this is the area where Nathan Bedford Forrest was trying to get to first. He'd set out at 4 o'clock in the morning, had a fairly long march, about 18 miles to get here, but didn't quite get here in time. So Grierson's cavalry, which is attached to Sturgis's Union Army, is going to actually get here first, and his cavalry, or a brigade of them, are going to go along this road, and just ahead of us they are going to have the very first clash with Forrest's cavalry right here at the Battle of Brice's Crossroads. Alright, well, I have just moved up the Baldwin Road here, and off in this direction, that's where we just were at Brice's Crossroads. And we are now looking at things from the Confederate perspective. Okay, so Nathan Bedford Forrest's troops are going to be heading in this direction, trying to get to Brice's Crossroads. And leading is going to be a brigade under a man by the name of Lyon. Okay, so these are going to be a bunch of Kentucky cavalrymen. Now, Lyon only has about 800 men, approximately, and greeting him as he is advancing in this direction off in the distance is going to be a Union cavalry brigade under a guy named Waring. Okay, so this is going to be some Indiana troops, the 4th Missouri, the 2nd New Jersey. All right, now at this point Lyon is outnumbered, so he needs to buy some time. So he's going to have a few like little false charges, and is basically going to try and hold off the Union a little bit while the rest of the Confederate cavalry roll up. Well, behind him is going to be Rucker's brigade. All right, so you have some Tennessee troops, you got some Mississippi troops, and they are going to form up on the left of him right here. This is going to add like another 700 or 800 to the line. Okay, and then behind them is going to be yet another brigade of about 500 men under Johnson. All right, and they're going to form up here on the right. Okay, so at this point you've got about 2,000 cavalrymen from the Confederates between these three brigades. They're waiting for a bigger brigade even still to come up behind them. And this is going to put them in a position where they can launch an attack right down this road headed towards Brice's Crossroads. All right, so we've moved closer to the crossroads right up here. And again, you've got Forrest that is outnumbered more than 2 to 1. So he's trying to pick off the Union a little bit at a time. He's going to try and knock out elements of the cavalry first, and then he's going to knock out the infantry. But he's got to take care of the cavalry first. So the cavalry, they're going to fall back to a position up ahead of us. That's going to be like their second fallback line. The troops from Forrest regiments are going to just be just coming in with pistols blazing and are going to push them back. Now, at the time that the Union cavalry is falling back? Well, coming in from this road over here, kind of approaching from the northwest, well, the Union infantry are arriving, and they have had one heck of a hard march. It's summertime. There had been some huge rains the day before, so they're coming up muddy roads. It's hotter than heck, kind of like how it is today. And as they get up here, well, they start forming in an arc around Brice's Crossroads. And they have some markers here that give us an idea of where these regiments formed their line of battle. So here, approximately, is where the Illinois 113th Infantry formed up. Okay, so you have Forrest's men. You can just imagine all these cavalry guys out here, and then right here you've got the Union Blue that is forming up to meet them. And if we go on down, well, they have a mowed path here that kind of gives us a good idea of where the Union lines are. Now, we're not going to go down and look at every single one of those, but if you look, well, there's another monument right down there. So next, after the 113th, you'd had the 120th, and then you would have had the 108th Illinois, the 95th Illinois, the 81st Illinois. Okay, so this line would have just bent in an arc around the Crossroads, which again is over here. And then on the other side of the South Road, Southeast Road, you would have had the 93rd Indiana and the 9th Minnesota, but it's mostly Illinois troops who are fighting in here. And here's where they are at a little bit of a disadvantage. They are firing at a line that is fanned way out. So all of their fire is going, it's having to be spread out. Whereas the Confederates, well, they can concentrate all of their rifle, pistol, and artillery fire here at one kind of a narrow point. So this is at the narrow end of the funnel. The Confederates are at the wide end of the funnel and are all closing in on this point right here. Now, back here at the Crossroads, Sturgis was basically throwing guys out here and doing everything that he could in order to hold this key position on the battlefield. There were Federal artillery that were deployed all through here, and they're firing over the heads of Union troops into the oncoming Confederates. Right along here, Winslow's brigade of cavalry would have gone right along this road, right coming where this car is right now. And behind them, as they were falling back, you would have had some Indiana troops and some Mississippi troops that would have been heading off in this direction. But on this road right here, well, I actually have a little bit of a personal connection with a regiment that fought down on this end of the battlefield. So everything that we have discussed so far has taken place along this road right here. So again, Forrest's main element is advancing kind of to the southwest in this direction here. Right here where you see this monument, which we're going to take a look at later, well, this is where the Brice house would have been. So they would have been right in the eye of the storm. Okay, well then Forrest is going to basically kind of swing around the right flank of the Union lines here, and is going to try and turn their flank. You got the 3rd Iowa down there, so you're going to have a bunch of Tennessee troops on the Confederate side that are coming up. And down this road right here, well, you would have had a couple of Union cavalry regiments that were sent off in this direction. Among them was the 7th Illinois Cavalry and also the 10th Missouri Cavalry. And my great-great-great-grandfather, a guy by the name of William Henry Woodruff, was in the 10th Missouri Cavalry. All right, so Forrest's men are going to swing out around here, and They're going to have an element, the 12th Kentucky, I believe, that is going to come up this road. And again, Union troops are just trying to hold on to this position as best they can. They actually, again, outnumber Forrest's troops, but then something quite tragic happens. So here's a bit of a problem with this Union position. As these Union troops are kind of forming this arc around this crossroads and around the Brice home and the church that was nearby, it's creating kind of this tight formation that makes it really easy for the Confederates to kind of envelop them from the right and the left flank. And that's exactly what happens. Forrest's men start pressing on the Union left, and then they circle around where my great-great-great-grandpa was, and they start pressing on the Union right. And as this is happening and their flanks are starting to be turned, well, way off in the distance, way beyond the Union left flank, well, the 2nd Tennessee starts to come in a little bit behind the Union troops. They're blowing bugles, they're making all kinds of racket. It's kind of like the story in the Bible about Gideon, surrounding the opposing army and making a big racket and making it sound like there are a lot more troops than what there actually were. And the Union troops start to panic. That panic spreads, and it turns into a full retreat back to a place called Tishamingo Creek. When the Union troops advanced on Brice's Crossroads, well, they were advancing from the northwest. They were coming down this road, crossed over the swollen Tishamingo Creek. There had been some wicked rains prior to their arrival, and this would have been just like a little bit of a torrent. So there was a small bridge that they crossed, and then of course, advanced on up to the crossroads, which is in this direction. And when they retreat from this position, well, they are going to be coming back down this road exactly where they came from. Now, there is going to be some problems. This little creek that had turned into a regular torrent and only has a little footbridge across it is going to basically bottleneck the Union troops. All right, they've got their wagon train over here. It is being guarded by men of the USCT, so United States Colored Troops. So the USCT regiments that were here were the 55th and the 59th. Many of them had come from this area, and now we're coming back to fight. Well, I mentioned that there were bugles that were blaring, and the Confederates were coming around the Union left. Well, you would have had the 2nd Tennessee that would have been advancing from this direction right here. So these Union troops are in a bit of a panic. Off to our front here, again, the 10th Missouri, my great-great-great-grandfather's unit, would have been guarding on the left-hand side, would have been providing kind of like a rear guard action. After the battle, there was an account saying that the 10th Missouri was like one of the few regiments that didn't just completely lose their minds here at the battle, which kind of makes me proud, that they were able to hold it together. Going out to meet the 2nd Tennessee was going to be, I believe, the 72nd Ohio, if I remember right. So they're going to be pushing, they're going to be holding them off. And right here, you're going to have a bottleneck of wagons and troops. There's an overturned wagon that is going to block the road and cause some problems. And then Troops are going to be jumping into the river. A lot of them are going to be swept away and are going to drown. As a matter of fact, there's an unknown grave of a Union soldier in a cemetery that we're going to look at later, who was recovered here back in the 50s, maybe. They found his body and then buried him. But anyway, Union troops are going to be taking off back in this direction, and they are headed for Memphis. And right on their tails is going to be Nathan Bedford Forrest and his Confederate cavalry, and some of the heroes of this action that are basically going to save Sturgis's butt and prevent this route from just becoming a full-on massacre is going to be the 55th and the 59th United States Colored Troops. If we were to follow this along, well, the USCT guys would have turned around and basically provided an action that held off the Confederate cavalry and allowed the Union to continue on to Memphis before they fell back themselves. Speaking of the USCT regiments, they have an information panel here that talks a little bit about the two regiments who were here at Brice's Crossroads. So you got, again, the 55th and the 59th. So you're going to end up having about 1,200 men who are a part of this battle. And they tell the story on here, in short, of these two men. So these two guys are named Baldy and George Guy. And they were born into slavery in Colbert County in Alabama. And during the war, joined what was initially known as the 1st Alabama Infantry of African descent, which later became the 55th USCT. So when they are fighting here at Brice's Crossroads, well, they were about 100 miles from where they had been born into slavery, which would have been the case for a lot of men with the USCT. And then they also have a quote here from Major General Washburn, where he says, "The colored troops made for themselves on this occasion a brilliant record. Their claims to be considered as among the very best soldiers of our army can no longer, in my opinion, be seriously questioned." So yeah, these are going to be some hard fighting guys here. All right, we've made it back over to the Crossroads, and there are a few things that I want to show here before we go today. Now, a lot of the Union men who died here and were buried in field graves were relocated to federal cemeteries. But the Confederates who died in this battle, well, a lot of them are still here. Now, here at the site of where the Brice home was in 1864, which served as a field hospital right after the battle, well, they now have a monument that says, "In memory of the Confederate and the Federal armies who took part in the Battle of Brice's Crossroads, or Tishamingo Creek, June 10th, 1864, which resulted in a victory for the Confederate forces under Brigadier General N.B. Forrest." Now, off in the distance here at the Crossroads, well, there is a church that was built in the 1950s that stands on the site where the Bethany Associate Reformed Presbyterian Church stood during the time of the battle. That church was founded by 25 members, which included 4 slaves, in 1852, and was right in the middle of all of this horror during the Battle of Brice's Crossroads. Of course, it also served as a field hospital, and here we can see the old church cemetery. So this, of course, was used by the community and members of the church, and after was used by the Confederates. So the Confederate dead, many of them were laid in a mass grave right here in this spot. Now, before anybody watching this decides to lose their mind about these Confederate soldiers being placed in a mass grave, keep in mind, this is in the South, all right? So these are, Confederates who are placing these soldiers in mass graves. Later, a list was compiled of the soldiers who died here and who were probably buried in this mass grave because the original wooden headboards had rotted out, and I think there was only like one who was known. But anyway, they had a project where they went and identified these guys. So here's a William Pope from the 7th Tennessee Cavalry. Here's a B.F. Northman who was in the 12th Kentucky Cavalry. So that would have been one of the guys who would have squared off against my great-great-great-grandfather down the road here. All right, here's one from the 8th Mississippi Cavalry. There's another 12th Kentucky Cavalry right there. And there's one little standout here of an unknown U.S. soldier who is buried here amongst them. Yeah, this is where the dead from the Battle of Brice's Crossroads are laid. All right, so that was the Battle of Brice's Crossroads. And as I've mentioned, I got a lot of my information from this, from some videos that the American Battlefield Trust put out, so you'll want to go and check that out. A lot of this ground here, it's not built up or anything because it was protected by the American Battlefield Trust. So very cool thing that they did here. But Brice's Crossroads, is this a Union victory or is it a Union defeat? Well, for Sturgis and his men, it is a resounding defeat. Forrest just absolutely whoops them here. And of their 22 guns that they enter into the battle with, the Confederates are going to capture 18 of them. They're going to lose over half of their wagons. And basically are going to be chased all the way back to Memphis. But guess what? As Forrest is chasing them back towards Memphis, guess what he's not doing? He's not attacking Sherman's supply line. So in a weird way, Sturgis kind of achieves a little bit of his objective of keeping Forrest down here in Mississippi. But this isn't going to be the end of this story, because there's going to be another clash between the Union and Forrest in Tupelo, Mississippi. We're going to take care of that in the next episode.